If you're not doing your pre- and post-trip inspections, it's likely hitting you in the wallet. On today's episode of Driven Too Far, we're digging into maintenance and repairs. Hello, I'm Andrew Winkler with Chief Carriers, and this is Driven Too Far, the truth about trucking, a podcast that helps over-the-road truck drivers balance career and family. Welcome back to Driven Too Far. Today we're talking about one of the most important, but one of the most overlooked topics in trucking, and that is repairs and maintenance. So today I've brought in a special guest, James Sugrue with Chief Carriers. He's our maintenance manager. James, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You know, let's start it off kind of simple here and talk, what is the difference between maintaining, maintenance, and repairs?
Huge difference. Cost is a huge part of that. So when you're doing a preventative maintenance program, you're doing it in-house. You're controlling the cost. You're controlling what you're doing to those vehicles and making sure that they're going to stay running on the road. If you're doing repairs, a lot of times chances are you're on the road. That is when you're spending extra money. You can't control the costs. You might be 100 miles from anywhere that can help you out there. So you're going to pay for mileage. You're going to pay for after hours calls. That all adds to the cost. So it's a huge difference when you're doing reactive maintenance versus proactive maintenance.
Right. And you just lose all control. If you're not actively taking care of the vehicles, getting them in for those preventative maintenance type things, and you leave it to chance, well, I can almost guarantee it's never happens in a good place or a good time of day, does it?
Nope. It always is somewhere way far away. It's the driver's under a load. We'd lose money when you're talking about delaying a load, missing appointments, things like that. And then, the cost involved in the repair. You could have, where you can do a tire at the shop and it's, $500. If you do one out on the road, it's anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000. There's huge difference.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, do you have any recent reflections of maybe, cringeworthy type things where we got hit with maintenance out on the road, or repairs rather, out on the road, and it just like, oh my gosh, if we could have just caught this or done this in-house?
I had one this morning, actually.
Of course.
The plug in the oiler on a steer axle missing on a truck. He's out in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody around. He can't just go to a truck stop and grab one, and he can't go anywhere because he's going to lose all the oil out of that hub. And
it's going to heat up, and you're going to have a bigger problem.
Yep. So $500 later, we got a $14 plug put in our truck.
Rubber plug.
Yep.
$500. And how much time did it cost him? Did we end up being late with the load?
So luckily today he wasn't getting unloaded until noon. So that helped, but it took probably 2 or 3 hours once he found it. The good thing was the driver found it on his pre-trip. So
way to go.
That is an attaboy for sure, because a lot of times the guys aren't finding things on pre-trips, and then so you do go down the road, and that small problem could have turned into burning up an axle, putting an axle underneath the front end.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit since you mentioned the word pre-trip. We know they're a DOT requirement. Any guesses to what percentage of drivers actually conduct a reasonable pre-trip each day?
Well, I'm probably going to upset a lot of people doing that.
Hey, this is the truth about trucking, so lay it out there.
I mean, we all know a lot of that stuff gets pencil whipped, and you clock into it and you sit there for 15 minutes and close it out. There's a lot of guys not doing pre-trips and post-trips, and it shows it. We can tell when we have something happen. A guy just dropped a trailer and he should have done a post-trip, but the next guy come pick up that trailer, even if it's a couple hours later, finds he's got lights out. That should have been found on the post-trip. And if the next guy didn't do a pre-trip, then he's going down the road, gets pulled in by DOT, find a light out. There's an infraction, There's a lot of things that are getting missed, and a lot of things that, and it's industry wide. It's not something that is just on our drivers. That's an industry thing, and we've been challenged with that for so long.
I know you're involved in some additional councils and memberships through some trucking association type things. Tell me a little bit, what do you learn when you go to those? When you and a bunch of other maintenance guys get together, what do you talk about?
A lot of the same things. We really have the same struggles. We're talking about tires and how we prevent them from blowing out, how we prevent flat tires on the road, how do we catch them on the road, the driver pre-trip issue, a lot of safety issues, some of the new maintenance things that are coming out, or new policies and new technology that's coming out as well. But the thing that I've found over the years is we all struggle with a lot of the same exact things.
I'm curious about the technology stuff. Is it made trucking better, or has it made it more challenging? And specifically, I know the answer to this if we ask you about the emissions and stuff like that on the engines, but what about the other things too? I know there's everything's connected nowadays. Does that help you?
Yep. So there's two sides to everything really, but connected maintenance, pre-maintenance, all these things, the digital side of things. The trucks can communicate with us through email. So we can get a check engine light and notification that there's codes starting to happen, and we'll get that right in our email. Those things are hugely helpful because we can look at that in the shop or, in the office, whoever's looking at those things, and we can determine, okay, what do we need to do here? Is this something he can continue on? Is it something that, we better start looking for something now before it turns into a stopped on the side of the road issue? Something that we're piloting right now too is our new wheel. Well, they're tire pressure sensors in the trailers that actually communicate through Samsara, and then they can send us notifications on low tires. Now there's a cost involved to it, but is the ROI worth it when we're talking about, okay, this guy's got a low tire, it sent us a message at the shop, we can call the driver, hey, get into this repair shop before you blow that tire out. So there's definitely some cool technology out there that's coming out and has been coming out or is out that is helping with control the costs, hopefully control the downtime. The downtime is a big part of it, because if we can get a notification something is going to be happening and we can get them to a repair shop before then, that's hopefully going to save us a bunch of downtime being broke on the side of the road. So
I'm curious, you made me think about, like, a check engine light comes on the driver's dash. The driver may not know the severity of that code, right? It's just it's the same color no matter what, if it's minor, major, whatever. But so how do you intervene with that? How can you help?
So, and there really is a couple different lights that can come on. You can have a mill light versus a CEL. So like a mill light is going to be less worrisome for that driver. That's kind of your driver telltales. But for us in the office, we'll know exactly what code that is. We know, we can look up troubleshooting and see what kind of like a D rate is going to be coming with that or not. And then we can let the driver know, hey, you're okay to finish your route today. Let's get this load delivered, and then we'll look for a service shop at the end of the day for you.
Let's talk about fuel mileage for a minute, because that is obviously a carrier's one of their biggest costs, right? So tell me about what you might look for from the shop's perspective in fuel mileage. Are you actively watching the MPGs on these trucks? What does a low MPG tell you, and what do you do about it?
So there's a lot of different things that go into MPG. It's a spec of the truck. It's the, whether it's automatic or manual, it's the engine that you're running. And then of course, all your, whether you got aerodynamic equipment on there or not, the loads that you're pulling, your tires are a huge part of that. If you're constantly running with low tires, whether truck or trailer, it creates a huge drag on your vehicle, and you're going to destroy your fuel mileage that way. So that's one of the things, that is important for the drivers to do their pre-trips, because that's also hurting their miles if they're running around with, or their mileage if they're running around with, low tires all the time. But also things that happen over time that are kind of hard to determine is like your DPF over the life of that truck and how long you have it. Your DPF over time gets more and more plugged with ash, and that can affect your fuel mileage. Then you've got, it's harder for that exhaust to get out, so it affects your engine and how it's running and how the fuel mileage is doing there. So there's a lot of different things that go into that. Also, how you're driving. goes into that.
Sure.
It's
that's a big
huge.
part of it, right?
You got drivers that will let the transmission do what it's supposed to do, especially with the automatics. They're not designed to get up and go. They're designed to do what they do, and a lot of that is fuel mileage and the emissions package and all that to meet the EPA regulations. But so the guys that constantly put it in manual mode and they're ramming through the gears and stuff, that affects your fuel mileage. And hard stops all the time and your stop and go, a lot of those things. So it's not only fuel mileage, but it's also your wear and tear on your vehicle. You're constantly shifting heavy like that and stuff. It also hurts your tires. The guys that just kind of go easy and we'll get there when we get there, they get better fuel mileage, their tires last longer, there's less maintenance, wear and tear on the equipment altogether. So there's a lot of wins for driving like that, less aggressive, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, and when I first got my CDL years and years ago, we were running a lot older Detroits and stuff like that, and you did have to wrap them up.
Babies
up. You did. Had to get some RPMs under them and stuff to get them to pull. But the trucks have changed so much. The technology with the low end torque and things like that. And I remember this story by a gentleman by the name of Henry Albert, and he's an independent contractor, owner operator, but he's also part of Freightliner's Team Run Smart.
Okay.
So the interesting thing was when the automatics first came out, the drivers are kind of pushing back, you don't have control. Absolutely. And stuff like that. So, but nobody ever taught the drivers how to drive the automatics. And that's where Henry came in. We had brought him in one time to talk to our drivers during a safety meeting type thing. And he says, listen, he goes, I know you want to just mash the pedal, right? And let it shift and get up to speed as fast as you can. He goes, I'll tell you what, you do that. I'll do it right next to you in the same truck, and I'll feather that pedal so I stay in the sweet spot with the torque curve. He goes, I'm going to beat you. He goes, I'm going to get up to speed faster than you will. Right. And most guys won't believe that stuff, but that is exactly how these trucks are designed.
And he'll get better fuel mileage.
Absolutely, he will. Yeah.
Yep. And that's the thing, the torque curve before you want to be shifting in the 15 to 18, 19, 2000 range, and now you're between 1,000 and 1,400.
Right.
It's a huge difference, huge mindset, and trying to explain that to people often is
especially as old guys, and started something different. It just doesn't make sense, but you're absolutely right. Thinking back about, I know you said you get data from the trucks. Obviously when they do code, you get the emails and stuff like that. Can you see trends in trucks? In other words, in your fleet, do you run a lot of the same model trucks? Can you predict or start to see patterns when, certain trucks start having the same problems? What do you do with something like that or that information?
Yep. So, yes, you do. We're always looking for patterns. We're always looking for trends, because that's part of what preventative maintenance is if so yes, we have a fleet where we're 50% one and 50% another OEM. So we're half and half. And so we do see trends, whether it's model year or engine or, manufacturer. And what you do with that information is then you can come out with an internal campaign. So, things I've done in the past is you're having a bunch of breakdowns on brake chambers. So we're constantly locking up brake chambers and locking up tires and destroying all these tires and just costing all kinds of money, maybe burn down a trailer or two. That's huge. What can you do? What's going on here? Well, what we found was the biggest majority of the ones that we're having issues with were older than 5 years.
Okay.
So all these trailers were 5 years and older.
So that was your pattern?
That was my pattern. It was a brake chamber issue. What do we do? Any trailer that is older than 5 years, we came out with a campaign, we're replacing all 4 brake chambers. The thing about that is, so we can replace 4 brake chambers in the shop internally by us, $300, give or take,
Yeah.
Out on the road, you have 1 brake chamber lockup. You can, even if it's just burning up a set of tires, there's $1,000 there, plus, a repair, $1,500 easy. We actually had some that burned down a trailer. You're $50,000 out you can do your whole fleet of all the brake chambers.
You could have replaced them all for that one trailer. Right on.
So yeah, trends are huge. Monitoring that stuff is huge. And a lot of that comes with hopefully the software, depending on what kind of software you have and what maintenance software you're running. Those are things that you can usually run reports on and find pretty easily and look at those trends. Where's my cost at? What are these tasks that we're constantly doing out on the road? And then you take that and look at your fleet and, okay, what kind of vehicles were these? Are they all the same? Are they different? Look at the age and look at, even the manufacturer. Is it a certain manufacturer we're having issues with? Not the OEM of the piece of equipment, but what were they using at the time?
Right. They get their parts from somebody, right?
Right.
They didn't make it.
And they can be different. And that's part of how you're speccing your equipment as well. So you can sometimes have to dig pretty deep to find, that manufacturer was having issues those years, maybe a COVID truck or COVID, issues that we were having then. So there's a lot that can go into it, but it does pay dividends in the end.
So let me ask you this, without naming names, I want to talk about OEMs a little bit. Is there in your mind one or two maybe OEMs that outperform others? And how do you use that information when it comes to buying or purchasing trucks? Does that come into play in your fleet?
Sure. And so it depends on what you're looking for in your fleet. What are you doing? What's your driver pool look like? What's your freight look like? But yeah, so for like a fleet truck, you want fuel mileage, right? You want dependability, you want uptime. Those are big things. And yes, there are certain brands that are much better than others.
I always say, people ask me, we run two different brands in our fleet. And to me, one is a workhorse. It's very reliable. And the other one's flashy and is a pain in the ass.
I would agree, 100%. But yeah, so that's where you look at what are you trying to do. So with that workhorse, that company truck, that fleet truck, we're looking for that thing to be up and running most of the time. It's going to get good fuel mileage, and it just is going to go. The other truck, you're looking at driver retention, maybe a lease operator program. There's a lot of different variables that go into that flashy one. It's more expensive usually to go that route. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for, but it is that lease operator pool what you need in your business.
It is a strategy.
There is a strategy to that, and buying both is a lot of times something that needs to be done.
Because you really have, you have a couple different kinds of drivers out there. Yep, some just absolutely. Like, I don't care what I drive, just make it's reliable, it's going to be safe. And others, they need something else. They need a certain brand or something. Maybe it comes with a free hat and a red oval. I don't know. But anyways, I get it. I always tell these guys too on the podcast, I say, I like flashy stuff. Mm-hmm. I like nice stuff too. But it's interesting how unreliable some things can be too. Sure. It's very disappointing for what you pay for the premium brand.
Yep. Yeah. And sometimes, you get what you pay for, you think, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes you pay for it and you're not getting what
you're paying for a name, and you didn't get the quality you were hoping for.
Now, I will say, those flashy ones, it does look good for our brand. It does look good for anybody's brand. You see that thing going down the road and it's chromed out and looks just awesome. It's got our name all over it,
Wow, they got nice stuff.
Those guys know what they're doing too. It looks like you're a very professional company and you know what you're doing and you take care of your drivers. That's a big part of it too, is taking care of your drivers. You want them to have nice equipment. You want them to be able to drive, something that they're proud of and that they'll take care of and keep it washed and keep it looking that way.
For smaller fleets out there, and maybe we're talking 10, 50 trucks, something like that, from your experience and your years in the business, maybe what is one good piece of advice you would tell that smaller carrier? They haven't got to your level yet, things like that. What is a good piece of maintenance advice you could leave them with?
A lot of things, really. So do your research. There's a lot of good resources out there. Join your local, whatever state you're in.
Association.
Join the association, the Technology and Maintenance Council of that state. I've learned a lot of things from other people, and there's a lot of really smart people out there. And so you lean on those people, ask questions. You know, with being such a small fleet, sometimes you don't have the weight to throw around as much, but make friends with people in national account positions. So, you know, if you're looking for maintenance out on the road, find an account manager for, you know, your big truck stops and the big vendors that are out there, and tell them, hey, yeah, we might be small fish now, but look, we're growing, we're going to constantly grow, and we'd like somebody to partner with for our maintenance down the road. And a lot of those companies will jump all over that, and they'll take care of you. So that, and just like I said, join your local associations and learn from these other guys. There's a lot of smart people out there. Going to those events and networking with those people is really huge, and they might have more advice for you and things that they've run into already with whatever kind of fleet that you're running or whatever. There's just a huge, vast amount of resources out there. So do your research, network with people in the industry by going to those events, and really try to get involved in some kind of national account. There's multiple, I guess, vendors that have like an overarching national account that small companies can be with. So you can get big boy pricing with being
joining a group.
Joining a group of other carriers.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's huge. I mean, even at where we're at, we do things like that. You got to constantly look for where the deals are at and what makes the best sense for your business. But there's a lot of people out there that are willing to make deals, and they want your business, especially in the economy that we're in now.
Well, they've already captured all the big guys, right? Yep. So now they're looking for the smaller guys too. So don't be afraid to ask.
Yep, absolutely. And don't be afraid to ask them to give you a better deal.
One last piece of advice. Let's focus on the drivers. What would you tell a driver from a maintenance director's point of view? What is the one thing a driver could do to help you in the shop?
Pre and post trips. Huge.
I had no idea you were going to say that.
Check your tires. You know, even if you're just thumping your tires, you're going to know that you've got one that's low. That's going to save you time. It's going to save the company time. It's going to save you money. It's going to save the company money. There's so many things. Your CSA score is very important.
Yes.
No matter where you go, for the driver and the company.
And it follows you. So it's not just, it's the company's equipment.
Well, no, that can be on you as well as a driver. Even if you don't work for that company anymore, that's going to follow you where you go to the next company.
Anytime you apply to a new company, that reputation is going to follow you. So it's important that you do those pre and post trips.
Absolutely. It helps the shop a lot. If you can find those things ahead of time before it's a shutdown on the side of the road, expensive issue.
Right on. Well, really appreciate you joining us today. Thanks for all the great advice.
Yep. Appreciate you having me.
You bet. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Driven Too Far. Be sure and check out the show notes for more maintenance resources.